Bob Leavine calls out NASCAR on Twitter. Denny Hamlin talks about his future in NASCAR beyond his driving career, and the TV numbers are in from Daytona Saturday night. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. I hope your week is off to a very good start. We have a very busy week of uploads coming on this channel. I have an interview with Quinn Houff, NASCAR rookie contender this year. That will be up very shortly. Of course, Darlington this weekend is the throwback race, so in a few days we'll be looking at all of the fantastic throwback paint schemes that will be hitting the track Sunday night, almost said Saturday, Sunday night this week, Labor Day weekend. Of course, it's also the first race of the NASCAR playoffs, so later this week I'll be looking round by round and giving you guys my predictions for the entire 2020 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. I'll tell you who my championship pick is, all that stuff. We're gonna have fun this week. We have a lot of videos planned over the next several days. So today, let's catch up on some news, and we'll go and start with the TV numbers from Daytona Saturday night, the regular season finale. This is the first time Daytona has been run in August, I think. I don't know, maybe they did it like 40 years ago, but it's the first time I remember them racing in August. Of course, this is the first time that Daytona has been the regular season finale, and the numbers are in. Per Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal, NBC earned a 2.41 rating and nearly 3.9 million viewers for the Coke Zero Sugar 400. Of course, there's no direct comparison because this is the first year that Daytona was the regular season finale, and last year's summer Daytona race was postponed a day, so hard to compare numbers there. But as you see here, NBC says that regular season viewership is up 2% if excluding the Kansas midweek race. Of course, we know the midweek races this year, a necessity because of the pandemic to get all the races in, but those races consistently have not brought in typical Sunday afternoon viewership numbers, but there you go. So almost 4 million viewers. Those are the big boy numbers I like to see for a Cup Series race. Of course, still down from what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but that's just NASCAR. That's most sports these days are down from what they were 5 or 10 years ago. Most, if not all sports, honestly. The NBA is down like 40% since 2011 or 2012, something like that. So anyway, it's across the board. But NASCAR, of course, it's an exclusive to NASCAR problem as well. NASCAR's seen a significant drop, but I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the last couple of years. And it's good to see a crooked number in the millions column. I mean, that 3.9 million viewers is more than the Indianapolis 500 drew in last week, which, I mean, that's not a swipe against IndyCar. That's just, I'm pointing out that those are still decent numbers for the NASCAR Cup Series. And while there is no direct comparison between this year's Daytona race and last year's Daytona race, we can compare this year's regular season finale to last year's regular season finale, which was the Brickyard 400. Now, last year's Brickyard 400 was run in September up against the NFL football, but last year's Brickyard 400 got 2.97 million viewers, nearly 1 million viewers less than this year's regular season finale got on a Saturday night, mind you, which usually has worse viewership at Daytona. So pretty big success for NASCAR there, getting a 1 million viewer jump this year for their regular season finale compared to last year. And there's also good news for the Brickyard 400, because while last year's Brickyard 400 saw record low viewership at less than 3 million viewers, this year, moving the Brickyard 400 to July 4th weekend, they got over 4 million viewers, roughly 4.4 million viewers for this year's Brickyard 400, a huge increase over last year's Brickyard 400. So if we really look at that, I think switching Indianapolis and Daytona this year was a huge success for NASCAR and NBC. I was a fan of it last year when they introduced the idea because I loved the fact that Daytona being the regular season finale, I knew the buildup and the hype and the excitement for that race would be huge, and I think we all felt it last weekend. It was pretty great. But I also loved moving, a crown jewel race that doesn't get the love that maybe Indianapolis Motor Speedway deserves. I love the idea of moving that race to a holiday weekend, a patriotic, very America weekend, run that race in the Midwest at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, arguably the most famous track in the world. I thought that was brilliant as well because I knew that was going to be a big boost for that race. So this year, by switching those dates, we saw the Brickyard 400 get a huge boost in viewership, and the Daytona night race held pretty steady with recent Daytona night races. 2018, I think, got a little over 4 million viewers, so a little bit down from 2018, but just in the same ballpark, but it was still a huge boost over what was last year's regular season finale. So overall, I think numbers for Saturday night, pretty good. Not amazing, not, wow, blowing anyone out of the water, but I think that makes this switch successful from NASCAR and NBC standpoint. I hope they stick with it next year. I hope we get Daytona as the regular season finale. I hope Indianapolis is the July 4th race next weekend, because while I know fans couldn't be there this year, hopefully next year they can, and I think fans will turn out in solid numbers for that race. It's not going to fill the 250,000 seat Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're not going to see a sellout, but we might see more than the 40 or 50,000 we've been seeing at that race the last several years, especially if they do another doubleheader with IndyCar. I don't know if they do that, but That would be awesome. All right, now let's talk about some Twitter drama. I know, it's just Twitter. Twitter's not the real world. Take everything on Twitter with a grain of salt. But team owner Bob Leavine, owner, of course, of Leavine Family Racing, took to Twitter late last night and early this morning to kind of air some of his dirty laundry with NASCAR, perhaps, for the entire public fan base to see, which was quite interesting. Anyway, we have a couple tweets to react to. Leavine Family Racing, quickly to catch people up. They announced about a month ago that they would be closing down at the end of the 2020 season, citing concerns from the COVID pandemic. Team owner Bob Leavine funds most of Leavine Family Racing from his family-owned business, construction company in Texas. And that company, at least from what Bob Leavine says, has been hit significantly by the pandemic. So unfortunately now, he didn't have a reliable way to fund his race team next year. So 2020 will be the final year of Leavine Family Racing. Of course, in his statement about a month ago and the things he said afterwards, he sounded bitter about it. He didn't sound happy. He didn't sound fulfilled. He felt like he had fallen short of what he was hoping to accomplish in NASCAR. So it was not a pretty exit. It was not a fun day or cool, happy thing to see. So Bob Leavine obviously bitter about the way his NASCAR ownership tenure, it seems, is coming to an end. He took to Twitter last night, and we'll read a couple tweets. We'll focus on this one tweet that got the most attention, and we'll see what he has to say. Last night, in response to this random Twitter user who said Gibbs has had a terrible track record of chewing up and spitting out so-called satellite teams, that NASCAR turns a blind eye to this, blah, blah, blah. Bob Leavine responded to this tweet saying, "Good comment, Jonathan. I really expected nothing from NASCAR, but since our announcement, I have heard nothing from them. Of course, that kind of goes along with our experience during our first 5 years. Never talked to anybody from NASCAR. We came in as nobodies, leaving the same." Ooh, so Bob Leavine there calling out NASCAR, I guess, for a lack of empathy, for not caring about its race teams, for not, reaching out, for not having those discussions with them. It sounds bad. It sounds like Bob Leavine does not think highly of NASCAR or NASCAR's leadership right now. And also in that tweet, because the tweet he was replying to sort of took a swipe at Joe Gibbs Racing, some people, and I think fairly, assumed that Bob Leavine also had some animosity towards Joe Gibbs and the way their relationship ended. I'll go and get this out. Leavine then tweeted later clarification. He wasn't really aiming at Joe Gibbs with those comments. He said later, "I was not referring to Joe Gibbs. I was referring to NASCAR, our sanctioning body. Plenty of other teams and executives have reached out." And like I said a month ago, a lot of people want to talk about how, this is Joe Gibbs Racing running another small team out of business. This isn't the same thing that happened to Furniture Row Racing in 2018. Sure, Furniture Row Racing, the way that whole business went down was a little shady. It was not a great look for Joe Gibbs Racing to jack up the prices at the same time they were losing major funding from a sponsor. Of course, that ran Barney Visser out of business, and of course, Joe Gibbs then poached Cole Pearn and Martin Truex into their main shop. Well, not a good look then. That's different. Furniture Row Racing is not the same as what happened to Leavine Family Racing. If the COVID pandemic does not happen this year, Leavine Family Racing is still in business in 2021. They're still working with Joe Gibbs Racing, and that probably becomes a good partnership going forward. But with the pandemic, which nobody saw coming back in like January, with the pandemic hitting the country, hitting the world the way it has, of course, that's caused money to be tighter, and that's made business that much more difficult. So I don't see what happened to Leavine Family Racing as anything similar to what happened to Furniture Row Racing, but of course people are going to continue to call out Joe Gibbs Racing. But Bob Leavine, as it seems clear in his tweets, doesn't have any ill will towards Joe Gibbs Racing. I think he understands that their partnership was not the problem here. But going back to his concerns with NASCAR, there's nothing really new here. I mean, it's new to hear an active, because he's still an active team owner, publicly calling out NASCAR, publicly criticizing NASCAR. That is new. But all of his concerns just boil back down to the business model in NASCAR needs to change. And NASCAR leadership knows that. And it needs to change beyond just the next gen car. Of course, the next gen car in 2022 is expected to save teams money in the long run. But I think the business does need to change beyond that. And I think that's something everyone's talked about for years now. In fact, some drivers and now team owners are calling attention to it. The vast majority of the money that makes all the systems in NASCAR go around, the money that funds NASCAR corporate, funds all the individual race teams, which are separate from NASCAR. It's not like Major League Baseball or the NFL where all the teams are kind of under the league umbrella. No, in this case, Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, Penske, they're all individual teams that just run in a league that NASCAR owns. NASCAR doesn't really have any super large connection to them. There's no collective bargaining deal really, other than the race team alliance, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, as we saw last year. A lot of teams seem to think the race team alliance is not particularly useful. But the point is, it's different than what you see in Major League Baseball or the NFL or something like that, But the majority of the money that makes all these systems work comes from the TV deal, comes from Fox and NBC right now. And the tracks take a lot of the TV money. The teams get a fairly small portion of the money. Things from purse payouts, things like that. Not a lot of the TV deal is going directly into the teams or the crews or the drivers or the owners, anything like that. It's skewed. Definitely more track heavy at the moment. Ticket sales, of course, matter, but the TV money is what matters most. And we've heard drivers and now we're hearing team owners kind of say that maybe that needs to change. Maybe, I guess the current TV agreements are still, under contract for a few years, but when that ends, perhaps something needs to change there. We need to see more money going towards the race teams because they're the ones that are actually putting on the show each week. They're the most pivotal part of the NASCAR racing experience. People don't show up and root for Chicagoland Speedway. Go Chicagoland! No, they show up to root for Chase Elliott and Hendrick Motorsports. That's all I'm saying. Not really the best analogy, but that's what I think Bob Leavine is saying here. The business model needs to change in NASCAR. Just quite frankly, it needs to be more affordable to own a NASCAR Cup Series race team. There are plenty of teams in the NASCAR Cup Series that do believe NASCAR is heading the right direction. I think even Bob Leavine agrees that NASCAR is at least attempting to make the right changes going forward. And I think the next gen car is kind of the start of all that. I'm not really sure what else Bob Leavine wants from NASCAR in this case. It sounds like he's miffed that NASCAR didn't knock on his door and reach out and say, hey man, what can we do to make sure small teams like yours don't go away? Is that what he wanted? Did he want, Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell and Mike Helton, did he want them to take him out to brunch one day and talk through his problems? I'm not really sure what Bob Leavine wants from NASCAR here. Once Bob Leavine said we're closing, what's NASCAR going to do? No, Bob, stay. We'll jack the prices down. They can't do that. That's not the way this works. It sounds like Bob Leavine just feels a little bit forgotten. Let's be honest, NASCAR is going to go on with or without Bob Leavine racing in the Cup Series. And I think Bob Levine's a smart enough guy. He should know that. I feel like he's taking it a little bit personally that NASCAR is not going out of their way to ask and figure out what's wrong and all this stuff. NASCAR is not going to come in and bail the team out. That's not the way this works. So I'm not sure exactly what Bob Leavine wants. It sounds like earlier this year during the pandemic when a lot of the teams were in discussions with NASCAR about how to resume the season, how to financially stay afloat. It sounds like Bob Leavine was in on those meetings, but often was maybe outvoted, or at least was not, his concerns were not always given the most weight. I don't know how those conversations actually went, but I know Bob Leavine didn't love the way some of those conversations went. It sounded like maybe he was hopeful they could get the next gen car out early enough, or maybe by next season still, so that would be a cost saving measure for the team. That's what it sounds like he might have been pushing for, among other things. NASCAR obviously opted to go with something else. Again, I completely get Bob Leavine being frustrated, and he did clarify, in that first tweet it said that, NASCAR hasn't talked to us in the first 5 years or whatever it is. He's talking about the first 5 years. That was 2010 to 2015. Leavine Family Racing is a decade old. In a follow-up tweet, Bob Leavine kind of backtracked a little bit, didn't sound quite as angry with NASCAR. In a response to another Twitter user, he says, to be perfectly transparent, the past 5 years, there has been better communication between Leavine Family Racing and NASCAR, but the results have not changed. Still not a sustainable business model. And I think that's really it. I think his number one gripe is with NASCAR's business model. It's just not easy to own a NASCAR Cup Series team and make money doing it and be competitive at the same time. You can do what Spire's doing and just limp around the track for a third of the race or 2/3 of the race and make just enough money to keep doing that each week. You can do that. But if you want to be competitive, it is extremely hard to get into NASCAR unless you have, the business connections like Rick Hendrick has, where he owns countless car dealerships around the country and he can sell sponsorships sort of based off that. Unless you're a team owner like that who has the ability to pull those kind of strings, it's extremely difficult to make it in the NASCAR Cup Series and be competitive. I applaud Bob Leavine for doing as well as he did. Went from a part-time team just a few years ago to almost making the NASCAR playoffs, and last year almost winning a race with Matt DiBenedetto. And I still think there's a possibility they'll win a race this year before the season's all said and done. So I think Bob Leavine did a pretty good job. It wasn't quite Furniture Row levels of good, who actually showed up and won a championship. Bob Leavine was just a NASCAR fan getting into the sport and trying to compete in it. And with all that being considered in a relatively short amount of time, I think they did an okay job. But of course, it comes to a bitter end, and it sounds like he's unhappy with NASCAR's leadership, NASCAR's inability to change, I guess, as quick as Bob Leavine was hoping they could. I think it just is what it is. It sucks. It really sucks. And that's the best I can say. There's not a whole lot that I think can change at the moment. But of course, over the next few years, the NASCAR business model is going to change. The next gen car is going to be a driving force behind that. And hopefully going forward, we will see far fewer stories like Leavine Family Racing's end up kind of with a bitter end the way his did. But I don't know. It's unfortunate. Now, last thing I want to hit on in this episode, last week, just before everyone rolled into Daytona, Denny Hamlin did his kind of typical weekly media appearance, hopped in a Zoom call. People asked him some questions, and a couple reporters actually asked Denny Hamlin about the recent rumors that we've even addressed on this show. And at this point, they're not even really rumors anymore. They're basically reports. We know conversations are happening. The reports, rumors that Denny Hamlin is interested in investing in Richard Petty Motorsports, possibly helping them switch manufacturers over to Toyota as soon as next season with Bubba Wallace, the driver. There have been other rumors that another high-profile investor might be coming in on this as well. That, of course, we've talked about. Don't know where that's going yet, but reporters asked Denny Hamlin last week about his involvement, potential involvement, I should say, with Richard Petty Motorsports, and here's what Denny Hamlin had to say.
There's just so much chatter going on. Can you say if you have any involvement in trying to invest or find an investor for RPM?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to announce or to speak about when it comes to it. I think that I'm always looking towards what I'm going to do after my driving career is over. I've got some great partners that support me and my decisions, what I will do for years to come. So I don't know. I wish I had something to announce, but I really don't. There's a lot of things up in the air that are still getting worked on. But I've got to win this weekend and next weekend, and that's where I've got to focus.
So when asked, are you interested in investing in Richard Petty Motorsports, Denny Hamlin does not say no. In fact, he basically says that, yeah, I'm always looking for opportunities like that, but I don't have anything to announce just yet, which sounds par for the course. It sounds like they're still having ongoing conversations. We know Richard Petty Motorsports has talked to Toyota, but we know that they haven't come to an agreement, at least not yet. They may not. They may will at some point. So if you want my interpretation of those comments, I think, yes, Denny Hamlin has had some sort of conversation with people at Toyota, Richard Petty Motorsports, about being involved with that team going forward. Don't know how close to becoming reality that situation may be, but it does sound like Denny Hamlin has poked his nose around and has shown interest potentially in investing in a team beyond Joe Gibbs Racing, beyond his current driving career. So this is certainly something to keep tabs on going forward. And of course, to continue to feed the conspiracy theorists, last week Denny Hamlin posted on his Instagram story a photo of him rolling up to Grove 23, Michael Jordan's privately owned Florida golf club. So Denny Hamlin, again, continuing to feed the rumors that Michael Jordan may be involved. I don't know at this point. At this point, it's all bets are off. Michael Jordan's spokesperson said last week that there's no truth to the rumors Jordan is interested in buying part of Richard Petty Motorsports, but I don't know. I do not know. And of course, Bubba Wallace has still not given any indication as to where he's going to go next year. We know he has offers from Richard Petty Motorsports. We also know he has offers from Chip Ganassi Racing. We don't know if he has any offers from anywhere else yet. All we do know is that he has not yet made a decision regarding his future. He's probably waiting to see how these Richard Petty Motorsports Toyota conversations end up going, and we'll probably make a decision based off that. If you had to get my guess, we'll be following that fairly closely. There are still more questions than answers out there as far as NASCAR silly season and free agency is concerned. So we'll keep our ears open and our eyes peeled going forward. That is all I've got for today's episode, though. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you are new. You aren't going to want to miss any of the videos coming out later this week. We've got a ton of content right around the corner, so stay tuned for all that. Follow me on other social media as well, and a big thank you, as always, to my fantastic Patreon supporters. Couldn't keep doing this show without their tremendous support of Out of the Groove, so thank you very much. Busy week. I'm excited. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday. I will see you all again very, very soon. Take care, y'all.